Cold rain fell over the alien city of Nartheon, painting the streets with silver light. Neon signs flickered in strange languages. Steam rose from vents and tall aliens wrapped in metallic cloaks hurried through the dark market. Among them walked a tired human man, Evan Cole. His jacket was old, his boots muddy, and his eyes heavy with years of disappointment. Once he had been a skilled engineer, working on interplanetary machines. But after the last war between humans and aliens, no one wanted a human mechanic anymore. He fixed scraps for coins, slept in a corner of his workshop, and spoke to no one. That night he just wanted to eat, sleep, and forget the world. But fate had another plan. As he crossed the narrow alley behind the food stalls, he heard a small voice. "Sir, please." He turned. There, under a flickering street lamp, stood a little alien girl. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing blue like cold stars. Her clothes were torn, her feet bare on the wet ground. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old in human age. Evan frowned. "You lost, kid?" The girl shook her head and took a small step forward, her tiny hands trembling. She held out a crumpled piece of currency, just $5 Galactic. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Here's $5. I just need a dad for one day." Evan froze. The sound of rain vanished in his mind. He stared at her, thinking he'd misheard. "What did you say?" She looked up, eyes full of desperate light. "Please, just for one day. Pretend to be my father." Evan's heart twisted. Around them, alien traders laughed and shouted, engines roared, but the world suddenly felt silent. This tiny child alone in the cold asking for a father, it didn't make sense. "Why would you need a father?" he asked slowly. The girl looked over her shoulder, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. She grabbed his hand tightly. "Please, they'll see me." Before he could ask who they were, Evan saw 2 tall figures appear at the other end of the alley. Reptilian soldiers wearing black armor marked with golden sigils scanning the crowd. One of them hissed and looked directly toward them. Evan didn't think. He pulled the little girl behind a stack of cargo crates and whispered, "Don't move." The soldiers' footsteps echoed closer. Evan could smell their metallic scent, hear the hum of their scanners. His pulse hammered. He wasn't a soldier, just a broken man trying to survive. But something deep inside him, something human, refused to let them take her. When the soldiers passed, the girl gasped softly, clutching the $5 bill to her chest. Evan whispered, "Who are they?" "They're hunters," she said in a trembling voice. "They're looking for me. Please just pretend to be my dad if they see us. If they think I belong to you, they won't take me." Evan stared at her again. Rain dripped from his hair. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," she said, tears mixing with rain. "They killed my mother because she helped humans. Now they want me too." The words hit him like lightning. He saw the fear in her trembling fingers, the way she pressed close, hiding from the soldiers. She wasn't lying. Her eyes carried the kind of fear only truth creates. Evan sighed deeply. He'd told himself he would never get involved with alien affairs again. But how could he walk away from a child like this? "All right, kid," he muttered. "Just one day. I'll be your dad for one day." The girl's face lit up through her tears. She whispered, "Thank you. My name is Lyra." "Okay, Lyra," he said softly. "Stay close. And don't talk." They began walking through the narrow streets. The soldiers had split up, their scanners sweeping every corner. Evan led her through hidden paths only locals knew. Old vents, broken passages, and abandoned machine tunnels. At one point, a drone floated down in front of them, its red eyes scanning their faces. Evan quickly put his arm around Lyra and smiled nervously at the drone. "Just taking my daughter home," he said in a shaky voice. The drone paused. Its lens flickered, reading the child's features. Then after a tense second, it flew away. Lyra sighed in relief and hugged him. Her small arms barely reached around his waist. For the first time in years, Evan felt something strange. Warmth. He had protected someone. They finally reached the edge of the market where the lights faded and the old industrial district began. His workshop was nearby, dark, lonely, filled with broken machines. As they approached, Lyra suddenly stopped. Her ears twitched. "They're coming," she whispered. Evan looked back. Through the rain and fog, glowing red lights appeared. The hunter's scanners closing in fast. He cursed under his breath and pulled her into a side alley. Metal doors rattled as they ran. Lyra stumbled. But he lifted her easily, running harder than he had in years. Blaster shots cracked through the night. Sparks exploded from the walls. "Keep your head down," he shouted. They turned the last corner, the old sign of coal mechanics flickering faintly. He kicked the door open and rushed her inside. As he shut the door and sealed it, he heard the distant roar of engines overhead. Drones searching, soldiers marching. Lyra stood by the workbench, breathing hard, eyes glowing in the dark. She looked at him and whispered, "You didn't have to help me." Evan knelt down, meeting her gaze. "Yeah, well, sometimes people need help even if they can't pay enough." He smiled faintly. $5 isn't much, kid." She smiled weakly back. "It's all I had." Outside, thunder shook the skies. Inside the small workshop, a fragile warmth began to grow between them. The start of something neither of them understood yet. But through the cracked window, Evan saw shadows moving again. The hunters had found the trail, and this time, they weren't going to stop. To be continued in Part 2. The Hidden Chase. The old workshop creaked as the storm outside grew louder. Rusted pipes groaned. Blue sparks flickered from half-dead machines. The smell of oil and dust filled the air. Evan locked the metal door behind him, pressing his back against it as he caught his breath. Lyra stood in the middle of the room, soaked, shivering, her silver hair clinging to her face. "You're safe now," Evan said, trying to sound calm. "No one can track you here." The girl didn't answer. She looked around at the messy benches, the hanging tools, the broken robot shells stacked in corners. To her, it must have felt like a cave filled with metal ghosts. Evan went to an old heater and hit it twice. It coughed out a weak orange glow. "Sit close to that," he said. "You'll dry faster." Lyra obeyed silently, holding her knees, her glowing blue eyes reflecting the tiny firelight. After a long silence, Evan finally asked, "Why are they chasing you, Lyra?" The little girl hesitated, then pulled something from her pocket, a small crystal-like cube. It shimmered faintly with golden light. "Because of this," she whispered. Evan frowned. "What is it?" "It's my mother's memory crystal," she said softly. "She worked for the Galactic Council. Before they killed her." Evan stopped moving. "Killed her?" Lyra nodded. Her small voice broke. "They said she was a traitor because she helped humans escape during the war. But she wasn't bad. She only wanted peace." Evan's chest tightened. He had heard many stories about humans being hunted, blamed for everything after the Great Conflict. But now, seeing this trembling child, he felt the injustice burn deeper. Lyra continued, "Before they took her, she gave me this." She said Lyra never let them destroy it. "It holds the truth." Evan kneeled beside her. "Truth about what?" She looked at him with tears glowing faintly blue. "About who started the war. She had proof that humans didn't begin it, that we were framed." Evan blinked in disbelief. "Framed? That's impossible. Everyone knows humans attacked the first colony." Lyra shook her head firmly. "No, my mother said the council lied. They made people hate you so they could control the outer systems. The truth could end the hate, but they're afraid of that." She held out the crystal. "It's inside here." Evan stared at the cube. It pulsed gently in her hand like a heartbeat. He reached out carefully, then stopped. "If that's true, you can't let anyone find it. They'll destroy it. And you." "I know," she said. "That's why I needed a dad for one day. The hunters only ignore human families. I thought if someone looked like they cared about me, they'd stop searching." Evan exhaled slowly. So that was it. The $5, the desperate plea, it wasn't a trick. It was survival. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, red searchlights moved between the buildings. The hunters were scanning every shadow. He tightened his jaw. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "But after that, you'll need a plan. They won't give up." Lyra looked down. "Do you believe me?" "About my mother?" Evan turned toward her. The look in her eyes reminded him of something he had lost years ago. Faith. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I believe you." For the first time, she smiled. A small, fragile smile like morning light through a storm. He took the crystal from her hand and placed it gently on the workbench. "Let's see what your mother left behind." He connected it to an old data terminal. The screen flickered. Static filled the room. Then suddenly a holographic image appeared. A tall alien woman with silver skin like Lyra's. Her eyes kind but tired. If you are seeing this, the voice said, then I have failed. They will rewrite the truth. The humans were not our enemies. They saved us when the Avan Plague hit, but the Council erased it, blamed them for the deaths to unite the systems under fear. My daughter, if you survive, protect this truth. The message glitched, fragments of battle sounds filling the air. Then it ended. Evan and Lyra sat frozen. She told the truth, Evan said softly. All this time, humans were never the monsters. Lyra nodded slowly, tears falling. She died for it. Evan looked at the crystal again. His reflection shimmered in its glow. He had spent years fixing broken machines, never realizing how broken the world had become. Finally, he said, then we're not running anymore. If your mother died to show this truth, we'll make sure everyone sees it. Lyra looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. You mean it? He nodded. I said I'd be your dad for one day. Guess that means doing what a dad's supposed to do. Protect his kid. Before she could answer, a sudden thud hit the door. Then another. Evan's head snapped toward the sound. Red scanner light crept through the window. Lyra gasped, clutching the crystal. They found us! Evan grabbed a wrench and powered up an old welding torch. Stay behind me, he said. Whatever happens, don't let go of that crystal. Outside, heavy footsteps echoed closer. Sparks flew as metal claws began tearing the door open. Lyra's small hand gripped his sleeve. Evan. He gave her a small, steady smile. It's okay, kid. Let's show them what one human can do. The door burst open and the hunters poured in. To be continued in Part 4. The hunters' arrival metal screamed as claws tore through the door. The old workshop shook from the impact. Sparks rained down, lighting the dark room in flashes of orange and blue. Evan pushed Lyra behind a pile of broken robots. Stay there, he ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled as he grabbed an old plasma cutter from his bench. It wasn't meant for fighting, but it would have to do. The door burst open. 3 alien hunters stepped in, tall and reptilian, their black armor reflecting the firelight. Their eyes glowed red, scanning the room like machines. Human detected, one hissed. Surrender the fugitive child. Evan stood between them and Lyra. You'll have to get through me first. The leader laughed, a dry, cruel sound. You think you can stop the Karth Legion with a toy? Evan smiled faintly. Depends how close you stand. He pointed the plasma cutter forward and pressed the trigger. A bright arc of blue light flashed. The first hunter roared as molten metal sliced across his chest plate. He staggered, armor smoking. Run, Lyra! Evan shouted. Lyra hesitated for a moment, clutching the glowing crystal. Then she crawled toward the back exit, small and fast like a spark through darkness. The second hunter fired a blaster. The shot hit the wall beside Evan, exploding in a shower of sparks. He ducked behind a work table, grabbed a wrench, and hurled it with all his strength. It hit the blaster's barrel, throwing the next shot wide. You're making this harder than it has to be, the leader growled, stepping forward. Evan darted out, swinging the plasma cutter again. The leader caught his arm and slammed him into a wall. Pain exploded in his ribs, but even as he gasped for breath, Evan jammed the cutter into the alien's shoulder and fired. The air filled with the hiss of burning armor. The leader screamed and threw him aside. Human scum, one of them roared. Evan rolled across the floor, blood dripping from his lip. He saw Lyra near the back hatch, trying to unlock it with trembling fingers. The crystal in her hand pulsed faster, like it could feel her fear. Keep going, he shouted. Another blast tore through the workshop. The heater exploded, flames rising toward the ceiling. The machines around them sparked and fell apart, throwing shards across the floor. Smoke filled the air. One hunter lunged at Evan again. Evan grabbed a steel pipe from the ground and swung it hard across the alien's helmet. The impact echoed through the room. The hunter stumbled, hissing, but Evan was slowing down. His arm burned. His lungs ached. Why risk your life for her? The leader shouted over the fire. She isn't even your kind. Evan wiped blood from his mouth and spat. Because she's just a kid. And because someone should have done the same for us when your council lied. The alien froze for a second. Just long enough for Evan to hit the switch on the wall. The emergency turbines roared to life. A blast of wind tore through the open vents, pulling smoke, sparks, and the hunters' cloaks into chaos. Evan used the distraction to grab a welding shield and shove one hunter into a sparking generator. Electricity burst through the room. The alien convulsed, smoke rising from its armor. Lyra screamed. Evan, he turned. The last hunter had grabbed her, claws around her small arm. The glowing crystal rolled out of her hand, skidding across the floor toward him. Evan's heart stopped. "Let her go!" The alien lifted her off the ground. "She carries forbidden data. The punishment is death." Evan dove across the floor, sliding through sparks, grabbing the crystal in midair. As he stood, its golden light spread across his hands, warm and alive. The hunter hissed, stepping back in fear. "That crystal, it's reacting to him." Evan didn't understand what was happening, but the energy from the crystal flowed through him, steady and strong. The light expanded, surrounding Lyra too, until the alien dropped her with a cry, his claws smoking. Lyra crawled to Evan, clutching his arm. "It's my mother's protection code," she whispered. She made it to keep the truth safe. The remaining hunters backed away as the crystal's glow grew brighter, pushing them toward the door. "Next time," the leader spat, his red eyes burning through the smoke. "There won't be a human left to protect her." Then he retreated, dragging his wounded soldiers with him into the storm. When the door slammed shut behind them, the workshop fell silent except for the soft hum of the crystal. Evan fell to his knees, coughing, exhausted. Lyra rushed to him, placing her small hand on his arm. "You're hurt," she said. He smiled weakly. "Takes more than that to kill a mechanic." The firelight flickered on their faces, human and alien side by side. Lyra whispered, "Why did you fight for me?" Evan looked at her gently. "Because you asked for a dad. And I guess I forgot how to say no to a kid who still believes in good." Lyra's eyes shimmered. She held out the crystal again, its light reflecting in her tears. "Then you're part of this now. The truth chose you too." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The world was still hunting them. But inside that small, broken workshop, something powerful was being born. Hope. And neither of them realized yet how much that hope would change the galaxy. The next morning, smoke still curled from the ruins of Evan's workshop. The air was heavy with dust and silence. The rain had stopped, but the streets outside were empty. Only the sound of distant engines echoed across the city. Evan woke to pain in his side. He was lying on the cold floor, wrists bound with glowing cuffs. His head throbbed. Across the room, Lyra sat in chains, her silver skin bruised, her eyes wide with fear. The workshop door had been torn open again. The hunters were back, but this time they were not alone. Standing between them was a tall alien in golden armor, the Karth commander, eyes like molten stone. His voice was low and cruel. "So the human who played father," he said. "How touching. But your little act ends here." Evan tried to move, but the cuffs shocked him with each struggle. "Leave her alone," he growled. The commander walked slowly toward the workbench. There, among broken tools, lay the memory crystal, still glowing faintly with golden light. He picked it up carefully, studying it like a curious insect. "This," he said, "is the reason hundreds of soldiers died last night searching for one child. Do you even know what this thing holds?" Evan glared at him. "Truth," the commander smirked. "Lies, dangerous lies." He turned to Lyra. "Your mother's mistake ends today." Lyra tried to speak, her voice trembling. "My mother was not a traitor. She wanted peace." The commander stepped closer to her. "Peace?" he sneered. "There is no peace built on human deceit. You creatures are poison to this galaxy." Evan's anger burned. "Funny," he said through clenched teeth. "I thought the ones killing children were the real poison." The commander's eyes darkened. With a motion of his clawed hand, a soldier struck Evan across the face, knocking him down. Blood ran from his lip, but he didn't stop smiling. "That all you got?" he muttered. Lyra's voice cracked. "Please, don't hurt him." The commander turned to her with a cold smile. "Then give me the access key. Only your blood can unlock the core of this crystal. Do it or I'll end him right now." Tears streamed down Lyra's face. She looked at Evan, shaking her head. "I can't." Evan met her eyes. He didn't need words. He gave a small nod, calm and steady, like a father comforting his daughter. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed her small finger to the crystal. A single drop of her glowing blue blood touched its surface. The cube flared alive, projecting light across the room, and for a second, even the commander looked in awe. Streams of data flowed into the air, maps, documents, hidden files, all revealing the Council's lies, the real cause of the war, the erased human sacrifices. But before the message could finish, the commander struck the device from her hands. Enough, he shouted. He slammed it onto the table, connecting it to his wrist console. If this data leaks, it will destroy everything we built. I'll wipe it myself. Evan lifted his head slowly, blood in his mouth, eyes blazing. Yeah, do that. Let the galaxy see who you really are. The commander glared at him, then turned toward the control panel. Watch as your hope dies, human. But that was exactly what Evan was waiting for. He had been quietly loosening the screws on his wrist cuffs using a small piece of wire hidden in his sleeve. As the commander focused on the panel, Evan broke free, lunged forward, and grabbed the nearest power cable. Sparks exploded. He jammed the live wire into the console just as the commander tried to erase the data. The crystal reacted. Instantly, glowing brighter, feeding on the surge. The lights flickered and the hologram suddenly spread across every device in the room, then beyond, out through the workshop's comm link, shooting into the sky like a beam of truth. Lyra gasped. You're sending it everywhere. Evan gritted his teeth, holding the wire even as it burned his hand. Your mother's message deserves to be heard. The commander roared and rushed him. They struggled, claws against steel, strength against desperation. But Evan didn't let go. He shoved the alien back into the energy surge. The console exploded, sending both men flying. When the smoke cleared, Evan lay motionless near the wall, his body covered in burns. Lyra crawled to him, crying, Evan, please wake up. He opened his eyes weakly, smiling. Did it send? Lyra nodded, tears shining in the golden light still flickering from the crystal. Everyone will see it. Every planet, he exhaled slowly. Then it was worth it. The commander tried to rise, his armor cracked, his voice a furious growl. You think they'll believe a dead man and a child? Lyra looked up, her small face fierce through her tears. They'll believe the truth. The commander raised his weapon. But before he could fire, soldiers from outside rushed in, confused and frightened. Their communication devices were glowing with the same broadcast, the mother's voice speaking across the network, exposing the council's crimes. The soldiers hesitated. The commander shouted, Destroy them both! No one moved. One soldier dropped his weapon. Another whispered, Is it true? Humans saved us? The commander's eyes widened as his own men backed away. You fools. They're lying. But Lyra stood tall, holding the glowing crystal high. No, you're the lie. The commander screamed in rage and lunged toward her. Evan, with the last of his strength, pulled himself up and slammed the fallen generator's lever. A surge of power burst out, knocking the commander into the wall. His armor shattered and he collapsed unconscious. Evan fell again, his body weak. Lyra caught his hand. Don't leave me, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You've got the truth now, kid. That's bigger than me. Tears rolled down her face. You said you'd be my dad for one day. And I was, he said softly. Guess I did okay. His hand went still. Outside, the skies above Nartheon glowed as the message of truth spread across every broadcast. The galaxy finally began to wake. Across the galaxy, screens flickered to life. Every world, and from the icy moons of Dravon to the crowded markets of Nartheon, was suddenly filled with light. The same voice echoed through every speaker, every holoscreen, every transmission tower. The truth must be known. Humans were never the monsters. They saved us when the Avan plague spread. They died so we could live. It was Lyra's mother's voice, calm and strong, played from the memory crystal that Evan had activated. Citizens stopped in the middle of the streets. Soldiers froze, their claws shaking as the image of the alien scientist, the one the council had called a traitor, filled the sky. The council hid this truth to rule by fear, but fear ends today. The message spread faster than anyone could stop it. Whole systems paused. On mining colonies, alien workers put down their tools. On military ships, officers stood silent. On the great homeworlds, millions stared upward, realizing for the first time that the history they believed in was a lie, and all because one human and one little alien girl had refused to give up. Back in the ruined workshop, Lyra knelt beside Evan, who still lay on the floor. His breathing was slow, but he was alive. The light from the crystal bathed them both in warm gold. Through the broken window, she could see crowds gathering outside. People were murmuring, confused but curious. No soldiers attacked this time. No one shouted, traitor. They only stared, only watching the truth in the sky. Evan stirred weakly. "Is it working?" he whispered. Lyra smiled through tears. "Yes, everyone's seeing it. You did it." He tried to laugh but coughed instead. "Guess humans are good at fixing broken things." Lyra held his hand tightly. "You fixed more than machines, Evan." He looked at her, eyes soft but tired. "Maybe now they'll stop hating us. Maybe now they'll start listening." Outside, something unbelievable was happening. Aliens who had grown up fearing humans began to question everything. Mothers held their children closer. Soldiers lowered their weapons. The once divided city started to glow with unity. Small groups of humans and aliens looking at one another without anger for the first time in decades. The Karth commander was gone, taken away by his own confused soldiers. The chain of power had cracked, and whispers of rebellion against the council were spreading fast. Later that evening, Lyra sat beside Evan as he rested on a cot made from old rags. The crystal floated between them, its glow fading slowly. "Will they come for us again?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," Evan said, his voice faint but steady. "But this time, we won't be the ones hiding," Lyra nodded. "People are changing. I can feel it." She stood up, looking out at the streets. Lanterns were lit everywhere. Humans who had lived in shadows were stepping outside. Aliens offered them food, blankets, shelter. It was small, fragile, but it was the start of something powerful. Evan smiled weakly. That's how every good thing starts. Small. Then from the city square a sound rose, not shouting, not fighting, but singing. A strange, trembling chorus of alien and human voices together, repeating the same word. Peace. Lyra turned back to him, her eyes glowing softly. "They're saying what my mother wanted to hear her whole life." Evan closed his eyes, smiling. Then maybe she finally did. Hours passed. The broadcast kept replaying on every frequency. Entire star systems began shutting down their war factories. Leaders demanded answers from the council. Soldiers who had spent their lives fighting humans began to remove their insignias. A movement was born. The Day of Truth. On that day, across dozens of worlds, statues of human villains were torn down and replaced with symbols of peace. 2 hands, 1 human, 1 alien, joined together. Lyra watched it all from the workshop rooftop, wrapped in Evan's old coat. The city lights reflected in her blue eyes. She whispered softly, "You kept your promise. You were my dad for one day, and you changed the stars." Below her, humans and aliens worked side by side to repair the damage from the battle. Someone shouted her name, and not in anger, but in respect. She waved shyly. The galaxy had seen too much war, too much hate, but tonight there was something new in the air. Hope. In the far distance, the golden light from the crystal shimmered one last time before dimming completely. Evan's hand rested beside it. His face looked peaceful, like he was finally home. Lyra touched the crystal and whispered, "I'll protect your truth. Just like you protected me." She placed it close to her heart. The faint pulse inside the cube echoed like a heartbeat, human and alien together. Outside, the first dawn in decades broke over the planet Nartheon. It wasn't just sunlight. It was the light of understanding. Many months passed after the Day of Truth. The galaxy was no longer the same. The war fleets that once darkened the skies now stood silent in their docks. The banners of hatred were torn down from city towers. On the great homeworlds, both humans and aliens began to rebuild, together. The broadcast Evan and Lyra had sent changed everything. The words of Lyra's mother became part of school lessons, and people across star systems whispered her name with respect. And every time they spoke of her, they spoke of the human mechanic who had stood beside her daughter with nothing but courage in his hands. The world of Nartheon, once known for its corruption and fear, was now peaceful. At the heart of the rebuilt city stood a tall monument, a statue of a human man kneeling beside a small alien girl, holding her hand, both looking up toward the stars. Below it was carved one simple line: "One day of kindness can heal 1,000 years of hate." People came from all species and planets to see it. Children left flowers at its base. Some said that if you stood there at night, you could still hear the faint hum of the golden crystal that once carried the truth to the stars. Lyra had grown older now, taller, stronger, her silver hair shining like moonlight. She wore a small tool belt around her waist, Evan's old one, the same he'd used to fix machines and fight for her life. She worked in a new workshop near the city square. But her machines were different. They were built to connect, not destroy. Small translation drones, peace transmitters, and healing bots that could work across alien biology. When people asked her who taught her to build them, she smiled softly and said, "My father did." He only stayed for one day, but he left enough lessons for a lifetime. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the city towers, Lyra walked toward the monument. The golden light of dusk painted the statue in soft colors. The air smelled of clean rain and engine oil, the scent of new beginnings. She sat on the steps below the statue, looking up at Evan's calm face carved in stone. "You'd probably laugh at all this," she whispered. "You never wanted fame. You just wanted to fix things." She touched the old memory crystal hanging from her neck. It flickered faintly as if it could still hear her. "I think you'd be happy now," she said softly. "Humans and Karth share food in the markets. No more fear, no more running. You gave them that chance." She paused, then smiled through her tears. "And I finally learned what a real father means. It's not blood. It's the one who stands between you and the darkness." A soft wind moved through the plaza. The lights on the statue glowed brighter for a moment, a golden reflection that shimmered like Evan's old welding torch. Lyra laughed quietly. "Guess you're still watching, huh?" Far above Nartheon in orbit, human and alien engineers worked side by side on a new ship, the first joint vessel of peace. Its name was simple, the Hope of Two Worlds. And on its hull, painted in large white letters, was Evan Cole's name, the man who had started it all. The ship's engines roared to life, glowing with the same golden hue that once came from the crystal. As it lifted off, children cheered below, waving flags of both species. Lyra looked up, her heart full. She could almost hear Evan's voice again. "Fix what's broken, kid. Don't wait for someone else to do it." That night, she returned to her workshop and recorded a message, a final piece for the archives of the Galactic Peace Council. Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with warmth. "My name is Lyra Venn. I am the daughter of Dr. Sarana Venn and the adopted daughter of Evan Cole, a human who believed that kindness doesn't need a reason. My mother gave me truth. My father gave me courage. Together they changed the stars. If you ever doubt that one person can make a difference, remember the man who became a dad for just one day." She ended the recording, looked out at the stars, and smiled. Moral message: family is not always made by blood. Sometimes it's formed by a single act of love. Humanity's greatest power isn't strength or technology, it's compassion. One day of kindness can heal even the deepest wounds of the universe. And as the night deepened over Nartheon, the statue of the human and the little alien girl stood beneath the starlight, a silent reminder that even the smallest moment of love can echo forever among the stars. The end.